My name is Emma, and I was 30 years old when I learned that betrayal doesn't always arrive with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it shows up quietly across a small cafe table in downtown Chicago, spoken by a stranger who knows your husband's name before you do. At the time, my life looked steady from the outside. Stable marriage, predictable routines, no drama. But that afternoon changed everything. What followed wasn't a story about screaming, chasing, or revenge fueled by anger. It was a story about patience, proof, and choosing the moment that protects you instead of destroys you. At the will reading, my parents smiled like everything had gone exactly as planned. The lawyer slid a check across the polished table toward my sister. $10 million. Jessica didn't even pretend to be surprised. Then my parents turned to me and said, "Now it's your turn. Go build your own life." I didn't cry, didn't argue, just stared at the table, pretending my heart wasn't slamming against my ribs. That's when something shifted. An older man in a gray suit, someone I didn't recognize, stood up from the corner of the room. "There's one more document," he said. The room froze. He unfolded a worn envelope, yellowed at the edges, my grandfather's handwriting clear across the front. My mother's smile faltered. My father's fingers twitched. Jessica's eyes narrowed. That envelope changed everything. It was the first crack in the story they'd spent years building, and it led me somewhere I hadn't been in over a year. My grandfather's ranch outside Charleston, a place that once felt like safety and now carried the weight of secrets. I hadn't been back to the ranch since the spring before Grandpa died. The gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped out of the car. The wind chimes on the porch, once the sound of summer afternoons, now echoed hollow, like something unfinished. I hesitated before knocking. The paint on the door was still chipped. The magnolia trees still leaned east, but the house didn't feel like it wanted me anymore. The door creaked open. "So," my grandmother said, arms crossed, voice sharp, "you finally decided to show up." I searched her face for warmth. I didn't find it. "They told me you didn't care," she said, "that you were too busy living your new life." My throat went dry. "That's not true. I called. I came here in March. Jessica said no one was home." Her eyes narrowed. "We were here. Every day." The silence that followed was brutal. She disappeared into the house and returned with a worn leather notepad. "This is the number he kept calling," she said. I recognized Grandpa's handwriting immediately, but the number wasn't mine. "This isn't my number," I whispered. "I've had the same one since college." Her face drained of color. "They told us you changed it," she said, "that you didn't want to be found." My knees weakened. "They lied," I said. "They cut me off on purpose." Then she said the words that shattered what was left of me. "They told me the funeral was at 9. Everyone came. They said you didn't show." My breath caught. "They told me noon," I whispered. "The church was empty." That was the moment everything broke open. Grandma called them all. My parents, Jessica, and Grandpa's lawyer. When they arrived, they had no idea I was there. I waited in the kitchen while voices filled the house. My mother's fake sweetness, my father's controlled calm, Jessica's annoyed sigh. Then Grandma said, "Please sit down." The lawyer opened his briefcase. "This is the final will of Walter R. Whitman." I stepped into the room. 3 heads snapped toward me. My mother went pale. My father stiffened. Jessica looked like the ground had dropped out from under her. The lawyer continued reading. "The ranch, the house, funds for Grandma's care." Then, "To my granddaughter Emma Whitman." The air tightened. "I leave the Whitman Research Annex, including all equipment, funding accounts, patents, and intellectual property. Jessica shot to her feet. "That's insane!" she yelled. "You promised me!" But the lawyer wasn't done. The remainder of the estate will be divided equally between Emma and Jessica. Silence. Then Grandpa's letter. Every word landed like truth, finally spoken out loud. "You were never a mistake," the lawyer read. "You were the legacy." I didn't look away. I wanted them to hear every word. When it was over, Grandma stood. "This family has lived a lie," she said coldly, "and it ends today." She pointed to the door. "Leave." And for the first time in my life, they did. The annex looked like a barn from the outside. Inside, it was everything he knew I needed. Morning light through glass walls, brand new equipment, workstations labeled with my name. On the center table, my childhood notebook, the one I thought I'd lost forever. Grandpa hadn't just left me a building, he left me a place where I didn't have to explain myself. I moved in fully, recruited 2 grad students, started small projects, failed, tried again. We built something real. Then I started a program for kids like I used to be, quiet, curious, overlooked. We called it the Little Scientist Initiative. Watching those kids light up, that was the real inheritance. 3 years later, I got an email. Jessica wanted to visit. She didn't look like the sister I remembered. No performance, no script, just honesty. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I just wanted to see what he believed in." She stayed. She helped. She showed up. Sometimes that's the closest thing to an apology you'll ever get. It's been 6 years since the will reading. I haven't spoken to my parents since. The annex is now a full research campus, labs, greenhouses, acres of test fields. Our work feeds thousands. Last year, I stood on a stage accepting a national innovation grant. In my pocket, Grandpa's old watch. Inside it, a photo of me at 10 years old, holding my first science project. He carried it every day. Legacy isn't money, it isn't approval, it's permission. Permission to exist, to build, to begin again. Some nights I sit on the bench he built and look at the stars, and when the wind moves just right through the trees, I swear I hear him say, "Write what they don't understand. One day the world will." And now it finally does. "That's insane!" she yelled. "You promised me!" But the lawyer wasn't done. The remainder of the estate will be divided equally between Emma and Jessica. Silence. Then Grandpa's letter. Every word landed like truth, finally spoken out loud. "You were never a mistake," the lawyer read. "You were the legacy." I didn't look away. I wanted them to hear every word. When it was over, Grandma stood. "This family has lived a lie," she said coldly, "and it ends today." She pointed to the door. "Leave." And for the first time in my life, they did. The annex looked like a barn from the outside. Inside, it was everything he knew I needed. Morning light through glass walls, brand new equipment, workstations labeled with my name. On the center table, my childhood notebook, the one I thought I'd lost forever. Grandpa hadn't just left me a building, he left me a place where I didn't have to explain myself. I moved in fully, recruited 2 grad students, started small projects, failed, tried again. We built something real. Then I started a program for kids like I used to be, quiet, curious, overlooked. We called it the Little Scientist Initiative. Watching those kids light up, that was the real inheritance. 3 years later, I got an email. Jessica wanted to visit. She didn't look like the sister I remembered. No performance, no script, just honesty. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I just wanted to see what he believed in." She stayed. She helped. She showed up. Sometimes that's the closest thing to an apology you'll ever get. It's been 6 years since the will reading. I haven't spoken to my parents since. The annex is now a full research campus, labs, greenhouses, acres of test fields. Our work feeds thousands. Last year, I stood on a stage accepting a national innovation grant. In my pocket, Grandpa's old watch. Inside it, a photo of me at 10 years old, holding my first science project. He carried it every day. Legacy isn't money, it isn't approval, it's permission. Permission to exist, to build, to begin again. Some nights I sit on the bench he built and look at the stars, and when the wind moves just right through the trees, I swear I hear him say, "Write what they don't understand. One day the world will." And now it finally does. Success has a strange way of traveling faster than truth. Within months of the grant announcement, people I hadn't heard from in years suddenly remembered my email address. Former relatives, old family friends, even people who used to look past me at holidays now wanted tours of the annex. They all said the same thing. "We always knew you'd do something big." I learned to smile politely and say nothing, because knowing and supporting are not the same thing. One afternoon, my assistant told me someone was waiting in the lobby, wouldn't give a name, said it was personal. I already knew. My father stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the fields like they were a courtroom exhibit. He looked older, smaller. "You built all this," he said finally. "It's impressive." I waited. He cleared his throat. "Your mother's health hasn't been great." I nodded once. "She asks about you," he added, "more than she admits." I met his eyes. "And yet she didn't come." He flinched. "I didn't come here to fight," he said. "I came to reconnect." I gestured toward the door. "You're standing in the place you tried to erase." Silence stretched between us. Then I said it, the truth he wasn't ready for. "You didn't lose me. You let me go." He left without arguing. That was the moment I understood something important. Closure doesn't always look like forgiveness. Sometimes it looks like boundaries that finally hold. The second attempt came quieter. A handwritten letter. My mother's handwriting, careful, practiced, apologetic without actually saying sorry. She wrote about memories, about how hard parenting was, about how she did her best. There was one line that stuck with me. "I hope someday you'll understand we were afraid of what you might become." I folded the letter and placed it in my desk drawer. Not anger, not satisfaction, just clarity. Fear doesn't excuse cruelty, and love doesn't require shrinking. That same week, a journalist reached out asking about family conflict behind the success. I declined the interview. Revenge doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes the most powerful response is living well, loudly, visibly, without apology. Meanwhile, the annex kept growing. More students, more research, more lives changed, quietly, steadily. And every time a kid looked at me the way I used to look at my grandfather, I knew exactly why he trusted me with all of this. During our annual youth science showcase, a boy named Lucas raised his hand. He was 12, nervous, brilliant. "Can I ask something not about science?" he said. The room chuckled softly. I nodded. "What do you do when your family doesn't believe in you?" The room went silent. I walked closer to him and answered honestly. "You build a life so full that their doubt doesn't fit in it anymore." Later that night, Grandma squeezed my hand. "You sound like Walter," she said. I smiled. That was the real inheritance. His voice carried forward. A month later, Jessica called. Not for help, not for approval, just to say she was proud. We talked about work, about students, about small things. When the call ended, I felt something unexpected. Peace. Not reconciliation, not rewriting history, just acceptance of what is.
I used to think revenge meant confrontation, raised voices, public humiliation, a final, "you were wrong." But what actually happened was quieter and far more devastating. My parents faded. No lawsuits, no public statements, just silence. Their world moved on without them being part of mine. And mine kept expanding. The annex became a model. Other states replicated the program. My name appeared in textbooks. One night, standing alone in the lab, I realized something. The storm Grandpa promised never destroyed them. It exposed them, and exposure is permanent. Grandma passed peacefully 2 years later. On her nightstand was a photo of the annex fields at sunrise. At her service, people I'd never met thanked me for things I didn't even know I'd changed. That's how legacy works. It travels without asking permission. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear the wind through the trees, and I think about the girl I was, the one told to earn her place. She didn't earn it. She built it. And the people who tried to decide her worth, they don't get to define the ending. Because this story was never about revenge alone. It was about truth outlasting lies. And it always does. There's a kind of silence that feels empty, and then there's the kind that feels earned. After Grandma passed, the house felt different. Not lonely, just complete, like a chapter that had closed exactly where it was supposed to. I spent weeks going through her things slowly, not because I had to, but because I wanted to understand the life she lived when no one was watching. In the back of her closet, tucked behind old coats and folded blankets, I found a box labeled simply, Walter. Inside were letters, dozens of them, letters Grandpa had written but never sent. Some were addressed to me, some to my parents, a few to Jessica. None of them were angry. That was the part that hurt the most. He wrote about disappointment, yes, but more than that, he wrote about sadness, about watching people choose comfort over courage, about how easy it is to mistake control for love. One letter, dated years before he got sick, stopped me cold. If Emma ever reads this, I hope she understands. Some people don't fail you loudly, they fail you quietly by refusing to grow. That sentence stayed with me because it explained everything, not just my family, but the world. The annex hit a turning point the year after Grandma's passing. What started as quiet recognition turned into national attention. Universities wanted partnerships, policy groups wanted data, news outlets wanted stories, clean ones, inspiring ones, stripped of complexity. They wanted the success without the cost. I learned quickly how often people want the ending without acknowledging the beginning. During a major conference in Chicago, a panel moderator asked me a question on stage. What motivated you to build something this impactful? The audience leaned in. I could have said innovation, or sustainability, or passion. Instead, I said the truth. Being ignored. The room went still. When no one listens to you, you learn to listen to the world instead. That's where the real work starts. Afterward, a woman approached me in the hallway. She was older, well-dressed, confident. "I knew your parents," she said gently. "We used to vacation together." I waited. "They talk about you sometimes. They don't understand you." I smiled politely. "That makes sense. They never tried." That was the end of the conversation. And it felt right. People love to ask about forgiveness. They ask like it's a finish line, like it's proof of maturity. A student once asked me during a workshop, "Do you forgive your family?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "Forgiveness isn't something you owe people who never took responsibility.
It's something you give yourself when you stop waiting for them to change. That answer didn't make it into the brochure, but it made it into the lives of the kids who heard it. Forgiveness for me didn't look like reconciliation. It looked like freedom from expectation. I stopped imagining conversations that would never happen, stopped rehearsing explanations no one wanted to hear. And in doing that, I finally stopped bleeding from wounds that were never acknowledged. That's not bitterness, that's healing. The final test came unexpectedly, a legal notice. Not a lawsuit, but a request. My parents were downsizing, selling property, settling accounts. They wanted to know if I'd be willing to meet, just once, to put things to rest. I sat with the letter for a long time. Then I walked out to the fields. The students were working, laughing, arguing over data, getting dirt on their clothes. One of them waved at me like I belonged there, and I realized something important. Nothing was unfinished, so I declined, not with anger, not with explanation. I wish you peace. I already have mine. That was the last communication, and it didn't feel like loss. It felt like choosing myself without guilt, for the first time. Years have passed now. The annex is bigger than Grandpa ever imagined, and exactly what he hoped for. Thousands of students have come through our programs. Many of them are the first in their families to be seen for who they are. Sometimes they ask me how I knew this path was right. I tell them the truth. I didn't. I just knew which path felt honest. On my desk sits Grandpa's notebook, Grandma's photo, the watch, all the quiet reminders that love doesn't always look loud, but it lasts longer when it's real. On certain evenings, when the sun sets just right, the fields glow gold, and the wind moves through the trees the way it did when I was a child, and I think about how close I came to believing the lie, that I wasn't enough, that I had to earn belonging, that being different was something to fix. But the truth won. It always does. This wasn't a story about inheritance. It was a story about survival, about choosing truth over performance, growth over approval, legacy over revenge. And the people who tried to write me out of the story, they became a footnote, because the ending was always mine to write.
Thanks for watching.